Hi everyone, my name is Maylena and this is
Jordan.
and we are the board certified bays.
Bays.
Welcome to another week. How you
Yeah,
doing?
I'm good. It's been a good, busy week. It's April when we're recording this, so it's Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. So there's a lot of events and things that we're going to and thinking about and contributing. So that's making it busy for us, but that's been great.
We did get to go on a date this week. That's special because
Yeah.
life has been cray cray.
Yeah.
We're not gonna say the place because
We don't know them like that.
we don't know them like that. But out of 10, scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, what did you rate the place?
5.
Okay.
I couldn't taste my food. It was too spicy.
Yeah. It was good. I mean, I would say like a 7, like a 7. It was Mexican food, but it was like
Too spicy for me.
I feel like we're spoiled in SoCal, you know. So, anyways,
I'll take your word for it. It was
Yeah.
too spicy, so.
yeah. Fun fact: Australians don't like spicy. I mean, I can't speak for the whole nation, but
Yeah, I can't
for
speak
all
for
the Aussies
everybody.
that I know,
But,
especially his mom. Shout out to you, Fiona.
yeah.
Anyways, okay, today we are talking about what it looks like to find a quality place to work that is an ABA place. So let's go
Yeah,
ahead and,
I mean, I think it's a good shift in gears too, because we
Yeah.
talk about a lot of the concepts and those sorts of things, and touching on finding good places because, especially here in California, it seems to be getting harder and harder to find like good, high quality services, and that's not to say that individuals aren't trying to deliver that. I think sometimes at some points their hands are a little bit tied in what they can do.
So yeah, we kind of thought it would be good to kind of go through maybe questions that you could ask. We've kind of done like a little, we've posted it on our Instagram, but we thought it could be good to like deep dive into some questions that maybe you can ask to really be able to see that the place that you're interviewing with is the place for you, based off of their answers and how you feel about them. So
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's start off with like RBTs, BIs. What are some good questions that you guys can be asking to make sure that they're taking care of you, to make sure that the place you work is ethical, that you're going to get proper training. Let's talk through that.
Yeah, and I think it's also probably a good idea to start with, even if you're not an RBT and you're just in the field, as a tech, which you can be here, or a therapist in California, you don't have to have your RBT credential. Just on your side of things as the therapist, just making sure that you know what you're getting into. Like, do a little bit of research on like what a session would look like, because you do have to be playful with kids to some degree, right? If you are working with kids, because we know that we can do ABA with all ages, but it tends to be our field filled with kids. So,
but it's also not just play. That kind of triggered my memory of the first place that I interviewed with, and it's like they bring you to like the cutest like situation that could be happening. A kid that's like 2 playing with bubbles, and it's really cute, and you're like, oh, I gotta do this all day. No.
Yeah, and when I say you can play with kids, what I mean by that is that you can connect with kids, because it's really hard to be successful if you cannot connect with the individual that you're serving. And so just being aware of what that looks like, being able to play, being able to teach, being able to be creative. If some of those things are missing, you may have a really hard time in this field.
Being able to switch up to like the style of play or teaching, because every every individual you work with is going to be different. So.
Absolutely. As somebody who does quite a bit of interviews, it's something that, is a turnoff is definitely, kids just love me. That sounds like a cop out. Like, what do you do to make that happen? Like, you have to give me through some stories, because it's important that, you can think through things quickly. You can be creative. You can make adjustments on the fly. You're not rigid to how things have to be done.
You don't have to be right all the time.
Yeah. Lose a battle, win a war. Like, it could be good. When teaching some really rigid or breaking some really rigid behaviors or working on some really important skills. You might have to make some sacrifices in what it is that you want to accomplish something greater the next session. So just something on that side of things, I think it's good to point out first, because again, we're in an area that you don't have to be an RBT to be in the field. And, many places, which is kind of a good segue into what it is that we're going to talk about, is like many places will, promote, like, do you like working with kids? Do you like, making a difference? Do you like making change? Then this might be the job for you. But don't actually say those things, that go into making that happen. Things that, some of the, the highlights: flexible work schedule, pick your own hours, play with kids, have fun. Like, those sorts of statements will be on like a job posting. And while yes, those can exist, it's not the everyday session that just looks like that. So that kind of leads into the other side of things on like how things are posted. But those are the things that you want to be aware of, even as an RBT or just as somebody wanting or looking to get into this field. Take a step back and look at yourself first and make sure that, like, working with kids, teaching through difficult moments, having the opportunity to be yelled at. My personal favorite is getting fired from kids. You're fired.
Uninvited to birthday parties and then re-invited 3 seconds later. I'm like emotionally like, so am I invited or not?
Yeah. Right. You're fired. I'm sorry. I like you. Like, those things are just, they're funny. But again, you have to go through these hard times in order to be successful. So as an RBT or a behavior therapist, there are some things that you're going to want to know going in this field. And even if you're not in this field already, and you're thinking about getting in the field, or you are just looking to switch up places because there's something that you don't like where you are currently, these are some good things to really think about as you go. So, Melina, would you like to tip us off with the first one?
Sure. So, I mean, you kind of already covered like the job description, but I think too, just really knowing what that entails for you. What does it look like for like your role specifically? What do they expect you to do? So that you kind of know what you're expected to do, because I think there's some times where maybe certain things get thrown onto direct staff that shouldn't be happening, or like maybe they expect you to have materials ready for your session, but you don't get paid for that time. So just things like that to be kind of cautious of. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Like, we always talk about it at our clinic, like being session ready when you're on the clock, like when the time that session's supposed to start, like that's when you need to be ready. And I think that's just kind of the notion for any job. Like, if you worked at Target, you can't be walking in the front door to start your shift at 9:30 a.m.
I mean, all my Disneyland peeps have to like get on a whole tram and get on a whole bus and be in their costumes I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like, well, you should be putting these materials into place and then expecting materials to be made outside of your session brought in.
Yeah, no, you definitely don't want that. I think that's not appropriate at all.
I agree.
To be doing that. Like, you shouldn't be doing a lot of work outside of work, or outside of your session.
And especially our VCVAs to be enjoy it while it lasts.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Going to session, doing your session, leaving your session, being done. That. Yeah.
It's the life I miss sometimes.
Every once in a while.
Every once in a while, I'm like, oh, it was so easy back then.
Yeah.
Didn't have to like
Different
take home all this stuff and then like have to create more materials.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, and no BCBA should ever put that stuff on you to do either, right? Because that is that's outside of your scope. That's not what you're supposed to do. And at any place, you should be paid for the work that you do. Yeah. I think one of the other things that is a big one is how often you actually see your BCBA. So as an RBT, you know that you have to be supervised for at least 5% of the hours that you work, right? So for those that are RBTs, but I think that rule is there in place just to make sure to hold a certain standard of quality. But I think it should be probably more than that, to be honest, as well as, with everybody else. It doesn't mean that, I'm an RBT, I have to get this, so I'm going to neglect as a BCBA everybody else because they're not RBTs. These guys need to get it. Like, that's also not fair. So just knowing how often you're going to see your BCBA or be supported through whatever happens, them coming out to your sessions. I mean, as BCBAs, we have an ethical obligation to also be there, a part of sessions to the extent that we can, to keep clinical intensity and client growth moving forward, right? So whatever that looks like, it's going to be different depending on your clients. And, there are times where it's probably going to be a little bit harder and you need to be there more. And there's going to be times where things might be going really smooth and you can be there a little bit less and save the hours for times that might be a little bit harder. But all in all, it's a good thing to know how often you're going to be supervised there with your BCBA and making sure that they are going to be there when they said they're going to be there.
Yeah.
Because if they're flaky, it's not a good place, because it just puts you in a position where you're going to have to make decisions on the fly that aren't appropriate for you to make. Like, it might be changes to something or trying something different, which is fine to do on here and there, and as long as your BCBA allows it. But on a consistent basis, it's not a good thing. And the whole, I haven't seen you because I trust you and you're good, it's played out. It's not a good thing. Some BCBAs will say that in order to make you feel good about not being seen, maybe because they're underwater. And this is not to say that BCBAs are bad in any way, but a lot of them are underwater in terms of the amount of cases that they have to see and what they're expected to do.
And if you actually are a really good staff, it's also a really good way for you to get burnt out, because you know that they just are depending on you and not really pouring into you.
Yeah. And that, I kind of touched on this already in terms of caseloads for BCBAs. Sometimes they can be can't even speak, extremely large. And if they're all at the same time, there is just no way that a BCBA is going to be able to divide themselves up. So this kind of leads into another question that you should ask, which is, what is the typical caseload of a BCBA, right? And the reason you want to know that is because that's going to help them. If they say you see your BCBA quite often, right? It's going to help you get a number on that. Because if they say, BCBA has, 20 clients, you're going to be okay, so that means in a week they're seeing roughly 20 kids or 20 individuals. Where are you going to fall on that? That's quite a lot. We have seen and heard of BCBAs having up to 60 clients on their caseload, which is just impossible to see, especially if the 3:30 to 5:30 slot when kids get out of school, and there are 35 of them or 40 of them are in that slot. It's impossible to see them all in a month. So that leads to not good stuff. And having an idea of that information is going to help you to know the honest truth about how often it is likely to be seen. And you can figure that out without them having to give, a BS answer of, you'll see them a lot. Our BCBAs like to go out a lot to see our clients, and they tiptoe around it and give a nice, sophisticated answer without answering it. But knowing the case size of each BCBA or the average will give you the information.
Yeah. And I mean, there are companies that have mid-tier supervisors, and so you probably are being supported in that way. But again, it's not the same.
Yeah. And, here in California, you are able to have that mid-tier level that, is a supervisor, and they report directly to the BCBA, and the BCBA can oversee them. And they can be out there. So, there is a way to get some support. But you also, you bring up a great point, because you'd want to know what the qualifications are of those that are in that position.
Yeah.
If the qualification is they had a heartbeat and a bachelor's degree, then that's probably not a good look.
Or they've been in the field for a year.
Yeah. So you'd want to like dive in a little deeper as to like what that is when they have a mid-tier, or when they say supervisor instead of saying BCBA.
Yeah.
Right? Like, well, what is a supervisor's caseload? How often would I see a supervisor? What does a supervisor do?
What are their qualifications? What does their training look like?
Yep. And you might hear like they're an RBT just like you. Like, well, what does that mean? Because the ethics codes for an RBT definitely don't say making clinical decisions like that.
Yep.
So it is something to be mindful of and to think about.
Mm-hmm. Another good question to ask is like, what happens when my clients cancel? I think
yes.
I think every company is different. I think there are times where clients will cancel, and unfortunately that's just, unfortunate for the day. Like maybe it's your last session of the day and that client cancels and there's just no other work available. That is going to happen. It's part of the territory. I'm sorry. But there is a problem when there's constant cancellations and your company doesn't try to help redirect you, fill in that time, like if it's consistent, because, you also need to survive. So I think asking like, so what does it look like when there's cancellations? What happens? Could be a good question to ask, seeing kind of just what they try to do. If it happens often, will the BCBA be talking, or the supervisors be talking to the parents? Things like that. There's a lot of reasons why cancellations can be an issue. But obviously, again, as far as it being a job and you being reliant on those hours, is something important to kind of know.
Yeah, 100%. You might hear things like, oh, we'll pay you for part of the session or something like that. You definitely want to know what that is. It can be expensive to live. You all have bills to pay. You also want to know like your caseload size, because that also kind of plays into it. Because if you have 3 sessions a day, you are likely to get canceled on as well. You also, if they got preaching like flexible hours and they give you flexible hours, but you're looking for 30 hours a week to work, or 20 or whatever it is, and they give you 3 clients that are all 3:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon, but nothing else in the day. Like, you want to know if they're going to stagger your schedule and things like that, which also would help you with cancellations, like, being redirected to a different kid at that same time. Or if they do pay you for part of the session, like, well, what does that mean? If I show up at somebody's house, I drove all the way there, they canceled, and then you're like, yeah, we're going to pay you for 15 minutes of the session. Well, I went through all that effort to do this, and my client didn't end up being here
on a Saturday. I've had that happen to me before.
Yeah, it's you want to work for a place that's going to take care of you, because you're taking care of their kids.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really important. I think the next real big one is for me, I think, in asking, is how do you provide growth opportunities? Right. And I'm not talking about growth opportunities in terms of climbing a ladder or getting to a new title or a new position, but in terms of learning, because this is a field that is forever growing, forever changing, forever building new concepts, new ways to make a difference.
Yep.
And you kind of want to know how that's going to trickle down into your position, especially if you're an RBT. You've already made the conscious decision to make the time to sit for an exam to get a credential, right? And now you have to maintain that credential, but you also want to make sure that you're doing the best that you can do, because you've made the choice to put some effort into this career already. So how you're going to get some growth out of this, the standard answer of I'm just going to learn from my BCBA, or you're going to learn from your BCBA, really then ties back into, well, how are they going to do that if they have a caseload of 40 and I will see them once a month?
Yeah.
Right. So if growth and feeling fulfilled in your job because you're able to make a difference means something to you, which I feel like it does for most people, then that's what's going to be a good question for you in asking. And then, you know, what kind of ties onto that too is, you know, contracts. What do you think about contracts?
I think it's tricky. I think I can't do like a blanket statement because I mean, maybe there's some good contracts out there, you know, but if a company is like, yeah, we'll help you get your RBT if you stay here for 2 years, run. I mean, again, I don't know about all places, but that's like not necessary.
No.
You don't need that. You can become an RBT anywhere, really. I mean, if not anywhere, but like,
yeah. So there.
If you
I mean,
can
there's
find a BCBA that's down to like help train you and sign up. Like, there's just so many other options.
Well, if RBT is, if the credentials what you're seeking, there are free training platforms or purchase, you know, training platforms online that give you the 40 hours training that you're required to have as a base minimum. And then you just got to find somebody that's going to sign off on a competency test. So if that is going to be somebody that you're working with, they don't have to put in a lot of effort.
Yeah.
But, you know, that contract of staying with them for 6 months or a year or something like that, this is a tricky situation. I think it is a tricky situation as well. But I understand both perspectives of like, well, if I'm going to put in effort for this, I want them to at least be able to help some of our kids for a longer period of time. Yeah. So I get that from the company side.
It is trash when you put all your time and resources into an individual and they leave right after as well. So again, it's tricky. I get both sides to it. Don't be a butt.
Yeah, it's one of those. I think too, though, is like in terms of like the growth, the training, and the development, we as BCBA should be giving that anyway. Yeah. That's kind of like my personal opinion on it. Yeah. If I'm training staff to be good, it doesn't matter if you have your credential to me or not. I'm going to give you the same level of training. Now, if you have your credential and you have that coming into my cases, I would expect a little bit higher of you because you've spent time doing some of this training and that sort of stuff.
But you'd be surprised.
Exactly. You'd be surprised what you get. So, but that would be that's my expectation. Same with those that, you know, come to me that are in a master's program for ABA. Like, they're making those conscious decisions to go down that. So I'm like, well, I'm going to challenge you a little bit. And maybe a little bit more than the person who just started in the field, because I'm laying down the foundation to challenge them later.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think that's great. So originally this was supposed to be both about RBT and BCBA. I think we should split this episode into 2.
Yeah, I think so too. So we can name this one Part 1.
Part 1 for the RBTs, the BTs, the BIs, whatever you like to be called. Yeah, those are like our overall, I think those are kind of overall like questions to kind of gather, you know, what the job is going to entail, who you're really working for. I think we kind of talked about too, like, you know, how are you going to grow? Another one might also be just like simply, how am I going to get trained in the beginning? Yeah. Because, you know, you could be coming into this fresh. You could be coming into this from another place that, you know, was trash. Yeah. And if you're experienced in the field, knowing that when you switch jobs, it will be different. Like, every company is different. And so knowing that, like, yeah, like, is this the place that is going to help me grow more in the field, or am I just going to be stagnant? So yeah, so I don't know if you have any last minute like things to kind of throw into there.
No, I think that covers like a lot of it. I mean, these aren't going to be the only questions that you should ask yourself or the future potential employer, but yeah, because there's probably thousands more that you could potentially ask. But I think these are just highlights that help to make sure that you're going to be getting what it is that you need to be successful and getting an understanding of the company. Because there is a difference between a company that it has more clients than they can serve and those that are taking the time to make sure that the clients are getting what they need before onboarding new clients. Yep. So there is a clear distinction between the two.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's great. And 2, if you guys have any other additional questions that you've found helpful, let us know. and we can share those as well, because you might have thought something that we did not.
Absolutely. We're here for you guys. So thank you all for tuning into this one. See us on part 2 for those that are BCBA, or at least seeking their BCBA. There we go. Thanks for reading my mind. Mm-hmm. We're right here today. Yeah.
At this moment.
So we will see you on the next episode.
Yes, we will.